Hi. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to talk about risk today. And specifically, I want to talk about the way that we think about risk, the way that we consider risk in our lives, particularly in the decisions that we have to make, or particularly when something really wakes us up. And we think, wow, okay, I'm going to make this change, or I get it. It could be something great, that wake-up call that we get, or it could be something really dire, like a health crisis or a loss of some kind. But whatever the wake-up call is, something breaks through in us and we have more clarity. Now, we don't have to wait for that to happen. We don't have to wait for a wake-up call in order to understand risk and how to use risk effectively. But it usually is the place where I think we're most aware that we want something to change. I'm going to tell you, so in 2012, I had the experience, as some of you already know, of jumping off the edge of my life. And without a plan to do so, all of a sudden, I booked a ticket to Paris, and I left 2.5 weeks later for 5.5 weeks. Actually, I left with a plan to possibly not come back. This was very much a wake-up call for me, very much. It was this space that I was in my life where I didn't know what was next. I couldn't see a future at all. But the reason that I'm wanting to tell you about this isn't about the trip. It's about what happened when I came back. But I remember getting back, and nobody knew I was back. And I looked around at my life in this community that I had lived in at that point for, probably 14 years. And as I looked around, I thought, why have I done the routine all the time the same way? Why have I gone to the same restaurants? Why do I take the same roads to go to the places I go to? Why do I see the community the same way every day that I live in, over and over and over again? And what if I tried to see it differently? And I remember feeling and seeing this difference, and really asking myself this question, and then determining inside I was not going to slide back into that routine, that pattern, that sleep that I had been in for so long. How familiar are you right now today with something in your life that you had been woken up out of and then you just slid back into it? Can you think about that right now? So as you're thinking about what has woken you up and how you may have slid back, I want to talk about our relationship to risk. Here it is. So everyone always goes to knowledge and skips risk. It's so easy to overlook. And the reason it's easy to overlook is because we really learn to be risk averse in our lives. You know, from the time we're small, we're taught to not touch that stove because it's hot, and to not cross the street without looking both ways. And that's not a bad thing at all on certain counts, but it's also a way that we end up living our lives. And it keeps our lives getting narrower and narrower and narrower. Our options and our opportunities also become narrower. But probably most important for me is that I go to sleep. Instead of being awake and aware of my life every day, I slide into the routine and all the things that have to get done, and waking up to get things done instead of waking up in the morning to be alive. Now, we talk about this, but doing it is quite a different thing. If you are really intent on being that awake in your life, that intent and aware in your life to open up all the opportunities that are possible for you, then it requires risk. So what is your relationship to risk right now? I want you to break this down into the main areas of your life. I want you, if you will go back through this Facebook Live, or if you have a pen and paper right now, I'd like for you to write down my personal life, my relationships, and you can be specific in your relationships. Which relationships? Your business, your career, your money, whatever it is, the different parts, the main areas of your life that are concerned, the dream that you have that's right here that you've been holding on to. I want you to write those down in order, bam, 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 bam. And then I want you to write out what your relationship to risk is with each one of those right now. You need to be able to see this. Risk is something that grabs your gut and twists it. Risk is something where you feel like you have real skin in the game. There's something on the line. Risk is something that will require you to transform. That's what real risk is. So if you're going to do this exercise with me, I'm just going to forewarn you that you're going to start the changes in your life. You're going to actually start to engage risk and transform just simply by getting clear on what your risks are. When we engage our risk, we make decisions differently. I want you to think about that. So you're going to be making this list of the main areas of your life, and you're going to be identifying what your relationship is to risk in each one of those areas. Are you avoidant? Are you engaging it? How would you define it in more terms than just avoidant or engaging? And as you do that, you're going to start to see more clearly coming up to the next assignment I'm going to give you. So you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, what is the risk in my career right now? Or what is the risk in my business? What is the risk for me to take now in my health? Now, you could look at that and say, well, with my health, the risk is to not do something, right? Well, sure, that's a big risk. But that's a risk that we take by living every single day. We're accustomed to that risk. The real risk that we have for ourselves is, what if I actually do engage my health and start to make these changes? So when you think about risk, risk is really going to be defined by the actions that you take. So the real risk for that example would be to continue to stay on that edge of showing up to whatever your health plan is for yourself every day. And the reason that I want us to think this way is because when you get down to your real risk, the risk that requires you to change, not just to move back into status quo, that's when we are most alive. That's the point of this. So I'm going to ask you this question. When was the last time you took a huge risk? How long ago was it? What was your last huge risk that you took? So I'm going to ask you, what is your real risk right now? You knew it was coming. You knew I was going to be doing this training. I'm always about where the rubber meets the road. So where is your real risk right now? So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to jump back to my travels and coming back home and realizing, how do I take that experience that I had in Europe and bring it back home? And I tell you, it was so hard. I slid back, and I found myself saying, yeah, I can just stay where I am. I can just do things this way, even though I knew in my gut it was time for me to leave my business of 20 years. So here's what happened. I made the steps. Bit by bit, little by little, I took very big risks. A lot of things were different. A lot of things were new. So I was taking that in, but I'm going to tell you, it was still this kind of living that I had done before. But that little voice inside said, when are you going to leave again? When are you going to go? What if you could travel and do your work from travel? Fine, I questioned myself. I thought, Carmel, you have to be the dumbest person in the world to be doing this. Like for travel for 3 months, like really, what is that? And yet that feeling in my inside, that gut feeling was, you need to do this. You need to do this. And if you followed me at all, or you know anything about what I do and where I've been now, travel and living and being able to be location independent is just a part of how I do my business and how I work and how I live. So now with all of this, I'm going to take you in to the assignments that I'm giving you. As the first is, I want you, in order to identify your real risks, you have to know your core values. You have to be more in touch with you right now. I'm going to post a values list, a core values list. I want you to go through that. First, you pick the 10 out of the list, then you reduce it to the top 5, and then you go down to your top 3 right there. I want you to list those main areas of your life out, and knowing your core values, I want you to get really clear on what your real risk is right now, your actual real risk, not your esoteric risk or your ideological risk. I want the real risk, the thing, the action, the change, whatever it is that's really calling you in each one of those areas of your life, and write it down. That's number 2. And then here's your third assignment. Make this risk your marker every day. This is the change that I wanted to share with you today. When you make this risk your marker every day, then you know whether you are still engaged in the change that you have woken up to, or if you have slid back into the routine, back into the pattern that you had before. Make that risk your marker every day. Are you sliding back or are you staying awake? I wrote this morning out of a dream. Knowing what your risk is and being clear with yourself on a daily basis determines whether you're sliding back into sleep and what's routine into your comfort zone, or whether you are continuing real day-to-day progress in your life. So you have your marching orders for your risk today. Make sure you know what it is, and then you know whether you're moving into the change or you are sliding back every single day based on what that risk is. And I will love to hear about it. And I will be back again soon with more deliciousness. And you guys have a beautiful, wonderful day. Take some risk, and I will talk to you soon. All right, much love.